Good evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. It is 7 o'clock on Monday, September 11th, 2023. We are now called to order. Would all please rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first matter on our agenda tonight is the approval of the agenda. Everybody has a copy of that. Are there any revisions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as distributed?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Next up, approval of the minutes. The minutes are printed on pages 6 through 8 of the packet. Are there any revisions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as distributed?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Next up, we have time on our agenda for visitor comments. Is there any member of the audience who'd like to address the council on any agenda item? All right, if you want to come forward. An agenda item.
Two chairs better than one podium?
Oh,
It's okay.
well, we would have, I'm going to get your name, and you will have 5 minutes to address the council on, and let us know which agenda item you'd like to address.
Okay. Pete Bream. I live at 419 West Jefferson Avenue in St. Peter for the last 41 years. I was just happened to be looking at the agenda today on the computer, and something kind of rang a bell with me, and I didn't come here to air dirty laundry necessarily, but it's something I think that the council and the administration need to be aware of. Maybe they are. I don't know, maybe it's not a matter of what's right and what's wrong. As far as the revision of the snow emergency ordinance, quite a lot of changes in there, and I see that one of them, a paragraph, dealt with, for instance, what if a plow hits a mailbox? For instance, I'm assuming, that something like that is a for instance, kind of a suggestive deal. Well, I remember last winter, we had 5 blizzards before it was winter, basically. And the day after one of them, a friend of mine and I were outside my house, right in front. And it was in the afternoon. I think they were doing plowbacks or whatever, I'm not sure. A young fella came by in a Orange City truck plowing, and when he came back to the curb to plow there, he hit the curb and went up on it, and the plow blade hit my 2 Kirby's, which had been emptied that day, I think, if I remember right. But one of them flew about 15 feet and crashed down, and I flagged him down, and I said, don't you have to stop and report that or turn it into somebody? I said, I realize it's a contractor's property, but I said, somewhere along the line, the city's probably going to be, liable for something like that. Well, he said, we do it different. We were told to just a couple times a year or so, somebody from the city and somebody from the JLP or whoever it was, get together and they just sit down and talk about things that were damaged or busted up by other contractors or a city or whatever. And they just settle it and they write a check. I guess my question becomes, is that a matter of liability for the city? If we are handling it that way, should we be? Does there need to be an accident report or some type of formal report that, because, people like to sue the city. I don't know if any of you have experienced that, but for some, it's almost a habit because they view the city as having deep pockets. So, and there was nothing, there was no bad driving or he didn't seem under the influence or anything like that, just something that happened. But I'm wondering if it put the city in a spot of liability and possibly responsibility, because it may not always be a Kirby, you know. I reckon those things aren't real horribly expensive, but, you know. So I just wanted to mention that as long as I was here. Again, I didn't come here to air dirty laundry or anything.
Sure. Well, thank you for your time. Usually, we do not answer questions during this time. We take it up when we take up the matter later, but is there anything you want to say before we move on? I'm assuming you kind of concluded your remarks, or?
Yeah, I never knew, I mean, it's never, all the years I've been in and around the council, I never had anything like this come up. I just wonder how do we deal with that?
Yeah, Tom.
Mr. Riem, if I can, I can't speak to the incident that you're speaking of, although we do have on occasion where Kirby's are hit. What you articulated, the driver said to you, is not part of our policy, and so I'm not aware of that. We do ask and want that drivers fill out an incident report or report if they've hit a Kirby or a mailbox or anything else. So I can't speak to the rationale or the explanation that you have, but that certainly isn't what the policy is. And also a point of clarification, because we really want to make sure that as people go home, they understand what the discussion is, Mr. Riem. And the discussion tonight is not about the snow emergency ordinance. This is a snow plowing policy. You indicated that it was the ordinance. It is not the ordinance.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear
Well,
and explain what really we're talking about tonight.
Like I said, I had never experienced anything like that, but I just felt that the administration, possibly the council, should just know about that.
Well, thank you for coming. It's
Okay.
great that you'd share.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a good night. So we will, are there any other members of the audience who'd like to address the council on an agenda item? Then we will move on to general visitor comments. The first item under general visitor comments is the oath of office for Police Officer Austin Buss, who's here tonight to join us.
So, Chief, if you don't mind, we'll work together. Yeah, we'll come up here and make sure that the microphones are in the right spot. And then typically after we do the oath, we provide for a recess so that the family can take pictures and do those type of things as well. So, Austin Buss, if you wouldn't mind raising your right hand. Mr. Buss, do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and that of the state of Minnesota, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of police officer in and for the city of St. Peter, Minnesota, to which office you have been appointed, and you'll do it to the best of your abilities? If so, answer, I do.
I do.
All right. Officer Buss, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, now we can So, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind.
Yes, we will go into recess so we can family can do pictures and things like that. So we'll recess and then we'll come back into open session.
All right.
And it is, for our record, 7:08 p.m.
Thank you. Okay, we'll make you stay. If we can, we'll get a picture with
14 p.m. And we are still on the portion of the meeting where we are taking visitor comments. So if there's anyone who'd like to address the council on any matter whatsoever, now would be the time to do so. Mr. Riem,
Which one?
whichever is your preference.
Thank you. Pete Riem, 419 West Jefferson for the last 41 years and 10 minutes. Anyway, I've been putting this off and have given things a lot of thought. I want to talk about the disposition of the old fire station, if I may. I read in the newspaper article, I don't remember the date, but it said that the one party, there were three parties, two breweries and the Muslim community. And it said in there that the religious community that was represented was allowed to change their bid at a public meeting. And I'm not a realtor, nor do I pretend to be. I talked to Jim Brandt and his assistant, for 5 minutes one day about it. I got, some answers that were sketchy. I think Jim would agree. You can't cover a lot of ground in that short time. Is that right? With commercial property, you can let one customer change the bid in the middle of a public meeting? Okay, well, I'll come back at another meeting. I'll be waiting for the answer to that.
I mean, if you want a response, we certainly can do that.
Hey, what?
We can respond to that.
Well, I just keep thinking that the very nature of this is kind of volatile in a way. And I think you owe it to your constituency to answer each and every question openly and publicly, so that there are no mistakes, that we make the proper decision and make it in the proper manner. Because that way there'd be a lot less hubbub if one decision is made over another and certain people don't like it. So I would like to know about whether or not that's allowed. Are there any zoning issues or ordinances that are relative to this particular project? If I had, I'm not any better than anybody. If I were looking to put a church, I don't know that I'd want to place it in downtown in the middle of the bar district. And it does, with the Muslim way of prayer, they have what is called a call to prayer. I don't know the whole scope of it, how many times a day or a week or whatever. Is that going to create problems, at 11 o'clock on the first time they do it on a Friday night or a Saturday night when the bars are busy and there's not much parking to be had? Likewise, is just the presence of that type of, it's not a business, but that type of, going to create parking problems in general. So again, I'm just wondering if there's any zoning ordinances or issues, and if it's appropriate. Because it doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem like a compatible use for that area. And have you heard your police department as to whether or not the police department has an opinion on any of these matters? Because, if there's trouble and they're competing religions, they're two different things. I'm not saying that one is better than the other or anything, but we live in a world where that's the type of thing that becomes very combative very quickly. And I think that the PD needs to be up 100% on this and probably be leading the whole thing most of the time. Maybe some of you would have come up with this as the first question. Have we been able to compute the amount of property tax that will be generated by either one of these breweries that have requested to take purchase of the building versus the $0 property tax that we will attain from a religious organization? I mean, we've got plenty of that going on in town already. We could live to be 1,000 years old and never be accused of violating any unwritten laws or thoughts or anything like that. To use late 1980s figures, at that time, 49% of the residential taxpayers in this community were paying 100% of the property tax burden. Now, I saw something from someone in the paper, I don't know, a few years ago, or somewhere, that it said that whoever it was, they had felt that had not changed much at all over the years. We live here, we've got enormously high electricity rates. We got some of the highest taxes around. Does it stop one of these days, this stuff?
I just want to let you know you have about a minute left.
Okay, and, I don't want to get into a comparison of the Quran to the Bible, Have we reached out to any clergy experts, maybe out of the metro area, to find out, is it really in the Quran that they have come here to kill infidels? And it just so happens that we Americans have been labeled the infidels? I think we need to take a serious look at this stuff. These are real questions to real people in our community. You can sit there and think this guy's nuts all you want, but you cannot hide from that fact.
All right, Pete, on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up.
Okay?
Thank you for coming tonight. It's your prerogative to address the council on the matters. I think you'll be reassured that many of the questions that you brought up, we have had conversations amongst ourselves.
Okay.
We've received questions and feedback from other members of the community. I see that Todd has been taking notes, and so Todd or myself can get back to you to address some of your questions. Now's not the time on our agenda for some of
And
the back
I
and
don't,
forth,
certainly
but-
don't profess to be the most up on everything. I get late start when I delve into something too from time to time. So,
Yeah, all right.
one word, referendum.
All right, we are going to move on to approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins with the, with the memorandum on page 10 of the packet, concludes with the resolution on page 27 of the packet. The consent agenda includes the following items. The renewal license application approved, subject to payment of licensing fee in compliance with city code regulations. That would be a temporary gambling license for Nicollet County Pheasants Forever at the location and the date stated within the packet. The following employee appointment approved, subject to successful completion of pre-employment employment and drug testing background investigation. That would be John Stutzman, Recreation and Leisure Services Director at the wage of $92,000 a year, and the schedule of disbursements for August 24th, 2023 through September 6th, 2023. Are there any questions about any items on the consent agenda? Hearing no questions, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Dufresne,
Aye.
Councilmember Schuerstein,
Aye.
Councilmember Ram,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution, the consent agenda is approved. We have no items of unfinished business before us today. We have many items of new business, the first 5 of which relate to the MnDOT truck station development, and we're going to start with adoption of a resolution approving the MnDOT truck station development agreement, which begins with a memo on page 28 of the packet.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Noel and members of the council. As you stated, the next 5 agenda items will be dealing with the MnDOT truck station. So starting on page 28, the City of St. Peter developed the North Industrial Park subdivision back in the early 2000s. Since that time, there's been 15 buildings or businesses that have been constructed. And Todd's brought up a map showing the aerial photo where some of those businesses have been built. That area is currently zoned as industrial, although it has more the feel of a business park with different uses in there. There is currently 23 acres of available shovel-ready lots and land, and 13 acres of additional future land and outlots. The sale price has been determined by past council resolution. So over the past few years, MnDOT has been looking to relocate from their Rich Street location and probably to the edge of town. So they've been researching different parcels on the edge of St. Peter. And after working with the City of St. Peter and their staff, they have come up on a site that's shown there on the map that would be in the yellow dotted line. This is a 13-acre site. Back on. A 13-acre site, which 6.55 acres is currently located in Traverse Township, and 6.5 acres would be in the North Industrial Park. As working with the City of St. Peter and MnDOT, Both staffs have come to terms on an offer to sell and a development agreement. And so this memorandum deals with both of those, and attached is a development agreement and then later on a purchase agreement. So the city attorney has been, for the city of St. Peter and MnDOT's attorney have come up with both the development agreement and the purchase agreement. So what we're looking for is approvals in September of the purchase agreement and development agreement. And then there's 3 other land use items that need to happen as part of this. And that would be the vacation of Hubbard Street and Sibley Street, approval of the plat, and then annexation of the remaining 6.55 acres. So as far as plans and construction, the plans for Klein Street, if this continues, would be starting in the fall and winter of 2023, and then final in 2025. And then the plans for the building of the MnDOT truck station would start in the fall of 2025 and then continue through 2026. There is a picture of what the future truck station would potentially look like. At this time, we're not approving a site plan nor the buildings. That'll come at a future date, but this gives you an idea on page 36 of what a future truck station might include. So on page 39 is the development agreement resolution. And the development agreement includes various items, and so does the purchase agreement. The purchase agreement has a purchase price of $250,000, and the development agreement talks about maintenance of the site, existing site conditions, Klein Street improvements, the vacation, the utility road connection, survey work, annexation, screening measures, landscaping measures, and then stormwater. So that's what the development agreement includes, and the purchase agreement would obviously include the price. So on page 39, the resolution for the development agreement, it would be staff's recommendation to approve that resolution for the development agreement that really details all the different things that we're trying to accomplish out there as far as the development agreement. That's on page 39.
So members, if you would like, Ben can really continue with his presentation and talk about it, and then you take the resolutions in order. We do have them in an order that we think is appropriate for that action that we're recommending tonight, which includes development agreement, purchase, and the land use issues as he described earlier. But if you have specific questions, I'm sure we're happy to answer that as well, Madam Mayor.
I would agree if we can try to answer most of the questions here, but we'll check in between resolutions to make sure new questions haven't popped up. Brad?
Yeah, so I have a question. It might be for Sally. So revenues will be placed in the North Industrial Park Debt Service Fund. Do we actually
Yep.
have debt service still on it, or has that been, okay?
Yep.
Typically, when we don't have it, so does the money just go in and we just pay the annual payments out of it, or how to?
Correct.
Okay. And how long is left on that debt service fund? Just curious.
I don't know off the top of my head.
So let us look that up,
Okay.
but I believe the debt service fund has been completed, but it is in deficit because all the land has
Okay.
not been sold.
I guess that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, and so the plan at the beginning when this was initially put in place in the early 2000s, and the basis for the price that was established by the city council is that when all of the land that was in the development was sold, it would pay for all of the infrastructure moving forward. So I believe, and we'll double check this, but I believe the debt service is completed, but again, the fund is in the red because all the land has not been sold yet.
So I guess the question is, how does that work? Does money just in the end just end up in the general fund, or how does that, since it's in deficit, or how was it accounted for at the time?
Well, so there's a separate accounting and a separate fund that's put together for that. And so this will go to pay into that fund, and until that fund becomes even, it doesn't dump into the general fund.
But we're still getting, I guess that's because the $250,000, we actually have another $250,000. Obviously, we can use it at some, I guess.
Well, it depends on the council's decision. So right now, that fund has used general fund reserves or cash reserves to pay the debt service. And so this fund then automatically would see the $250,000. And then when a settle up occurs with that, whether it's closed out or whether the council makes a determination, or your auditor comes back and says, maybe you want to close this fund, then those funds continue to be within your reserves.
So the deficit really is an IOU to the general?
It really is an IOU to the general fund, yes.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Additional questions? Hearing nothing further, the resolution authorizing execution of a MnDOT truck station development agreement is on page 39 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBoss,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up is the adoption of a resolution approving the sale of North Industrial Park property to Minnesota Department of Transportation. The memo for that one begins on page 40 of the packet, and the resolution is on page 43. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, the resolution approving purchase agreement for sale of city-owned property to Minnesota Department of Transportation for truck station development, MnDOT, is on page 43. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeBoss,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye. That resolution is approved. We will move on to the adoption of a resolution approving vacation of Hubbard and Sibley Streets. That memo begins on page 44 of the packet. Let's see. Are there any questions regarding that? Hearing no questions. Oh, Carrie, yes.
I was just going to note that this went before the planning commission. Was it on September 7th?
Yep,
And they recommended approval, correct?
that's correct.
Yes, thank you.
It's very controversial.
Yes.
No.
Thank you.
All right, that resolution vacating Hubbard Street and Sibley Street is on pages 53 and 54 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBoss.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption. We have two resolutions approving preliminary and final plats for North Industrial Park Subdivision Number 2. And let's see, the first resolution is on page 59 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sharpstra,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBoss,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
That resolution is approved. Unless there are any additional questions, we will move on to the resolution adopting a final plat of North Industrial Park Subdivision Number 2. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBoss,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
That resolution is approved. And finally, we have the adoption of an ordinance providing for annexation of property from Traverse Township. That ordinance is printed on pages 68 and 69 of the packet. Are there any questions? Hearing none, an ordinance for the city of St. Peter, Minnesota, annexing land located in Traverse Township, Nicollet County, Minnesota, pursuant to Minnesota statutes 414.033 subdivision 2-3 permitting annexation by ordinance is on pages 68 and 69 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
I have.
Oh, you have a quick question?
Yeah, just typically when we annex property, we pay the township over a few years. In this case, since it's it's an exempt property, would there be, I'm assuming, would we not be paying the township any compensation for property tax?
Our-
$16.24 in lost property taxes.
Yeah, this is as much a sign of good faith with the township as it is anything, and so we're going with it.
All right. Now, I believe we had a motion and we were waiting for a second. Oh, you got,
Second.
okay. All right, in that case, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpster,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Moving on, adoption of a resolution approving a request for city assistance for the homecoming parade. The memo begins on page 70 of the packet.
Mayor members, you'll see the request from St. Peter's Schools, and the location for the parade is substantially similar to what you've seen over the last few years since the new high school was put in place on the western edge of town. Although we have some concerns related to this relative to the detour and the traffic modifications that we've seen due to some of the activity within town, we believe that based on the short time frame that the parade occurs, that security can be appropriate. And as always with events of this type, we require the school district and other entities that are sponsoring events such as this or other festival activities on city property to maintain a $1.5 million insurance policy with the city listed as an additional insured. That is the case for this event as well. Happy to talk about it some more if you'd like. The resolution is in your packet.
Any questions for Todd? Hearing no questions, a resolution approving a request by School District 508 to conduct a homecoming parade on city streets is on page 71 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpster,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution approving new business license applications. That memo's on page 72.
Mayor members, you have two here, and both parties have been background checked, and we found nothing that would prohibit them from having the license that they have requested. The first is for Moonstar Issa, and he has purchased property at 1601 North Minnesota Avenue. That's what we commonly refer to as the MediaCom building out near Traverse de Sioux Nursery. And he's applied for a tobacco license. The second is for Amanda Malkin, doing business as Point to Place, and she leases property from the city of St. Peter at 107 West Nassau. Again, what we typically have called the old library site, or at least for the last 25 years or so, I've called it the old library site. And she is looking for a license for shows, so a show license for 2 nights or 2 days, September 17th and October 29th. Again, background investigations have been conducted, review of the ordinance has taken place, they meet all the criteria, and there's nothing within the background investigation that would prohibit them from carrying the license. The resolution is or having those licenses. The resolution's included in your packet on page 73.
Are there any questions for Todd or any discussion on this resolution? Hearing nothing, the resolution approving new license applications is on page 73 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpster,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution adopting updated job description for executive assistant to the city administrator.
Mayor members, this is an item that you discussed at a previous workshop along with the 2 others that relate to job descriptions. I'm happy to go through it in great detail if you would prefer. However, I will mention that some of the changes have been made based on the time in between changes. The last time this position was modified was in the late 1980s. As you may recall from the discussion at the workshop, I requested a modification relative to the job title, and there are some clarification issues related to elections and other things to better define this. As you know, we typically look at these if there's been a significant change in duties or if there has been a vacancy or a pending vacancy, and that's the case for this as well. Again, I'm happy to provide for any answers to questions that you might have as best as I can. I will mention that a couple of ideas were thrown into the mix at the workshop, and I believe those have been provided for within the job description. Again, the resolution provides for approval of the job description as set forth within the packet, and that resolution is on page 78.
Any questions for Todd? Brad?
As I indicated at the workshop, I think perhaps we take no action and just live in denial, which might prevent the pending vacancy. So.
That's one idea.
I think it's a risky
but-
gambit, but certainly within your authority.
Additional questions or ideas, creative ideas? All right, hearing none, a resolution adopting an updated position description for executive assistant to the city administrator is on page 78 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
There's a lot of hesitancy there.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution adopting an updated job description for our community service officer.
Mayor and members, this starts on page 79 with the resolution following. This again is for the community service officer, and you had the opportunity to review this at your last workshop with a couple of modifications. The most significant issue here that I would point out is we do have a few what I would call technical issues, cleanup issues, since it's been a while since this has been reviewed. But the biggest or most substantive change relates to providing that backup communication technician or dispatcher role as a part of this, and then that changes the pay equity points or the comparable worth points. Some people use that terminology just slightly as well. Today, there's no fiscal impact to the modification to this description, but it does certainly more clearly articulate what we're trying to do and the expectations within this job description. Again, happy to answer any questions that you might have to the best of my ability, and the resolution is included in your packet on page 84.
Are there any questions for Todd? Carrie?
I guess the catalyst for this change is sort of attempting to build capacity in the communications technician dispatch role.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent way to put it, to provide capacity. This is something that we've had, that dispatching is something that community service officers have done in the past, but it hasn't been articulated here. And with the challenges that we have related to hiring in a number of positions that you have, we want to make sure that, again, it's clearly articulated that this is an expectation within that. It also drives some of the training and other activities that go on within the department as well.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Hearing none, the resolution adopting an updated position description for community service officer is on page 84 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Our last updated job description for the night is for our electric foreman.
Mayor members, this starts in your packet with a memo on page 85, and Pete is here as my technical backup since we tag team on these as they move forward. As you know, it was a while back when you had an electric foreman, and that stopped and you moved to a superintendent organizational structure. We've talked about this in a number of different ways related to the job description itself, but certainly related to the vertical opportunity that we want to continue to provide within your electric department, and the importance of that related to not just the work organization and activities that take place, but also as it relates to opportunities for linemen who come into your employee to move up the ladder a little bit. And so that's what's really driving this. Pete, if I could have you come up, I would say that while there are some slight changes, I believe that these are more technical in nature, but intended to clearly outline what's going on. And one of the things that we had in the previous job description is working with overhead lines. And of course, you don't have that any longer. And so we wanted to provide clarity relative to a few things like that. And that changed over time since the last time this was reviewed, which I don't know the exact date, but more than a decade or two ago. Right. So I don't know if you have any other specific questions that either Pete or I can answer, but we're happy to do that. And Pete is here for the next two agenda items if needed too.
Well, get comfortable, Pete.
Madam Mayor, the description's in here. And
Yeah.
I guess I have a question. There's nobody currently in this position, correct?
That's correct.
So
Yep.
will this position is the intent to post this position and move somebody in there, or is that a discussion for a different meeting?
So it can be a discussion at any time the council would like this to be a discussion. Our intent is that, as you are aware through your budgeting process, that we look to have one more body within your electric department. We anticipate that is, or hopeful that that is more in an apprentice or a second year or even third year apprentice role. We would advertise this opportunity in the open, but certainly we have a number of candidates within your current staff that would be very, very excellent candidates for this, and so we would anticipate approaching it from that perspective. So opening this up when we're ready to open it up, and then backfill in with your, what I would call your lineman crew with an apprentice at some level. I hope that answers your question, Daryl.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Hearing no further questions, the resolution adopting an updated position description for electric foreman is on page 91 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Schuster.
Aye.
Councilmember Ram.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeBosse.
Aye.
Councilmember Rovak.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution adopting an updated snow policy, updated snow removal and ice control policy.
Madam Mayor, Pete is here to discuss this. As you know, we talked a little bit about this at your last workshop. And so Pete, I'll get out of the way.
Sure. As you're aware, the council took a lot of action back in 2003 to set up the policy as we have worked the last 20 years. 2020, after COVID, we did start the policy, update the policy, get everything pulled back together. Some of the things that we did that were changes in was talk about parking in city lots during snow emergencies. We also added language to help downtown customers during snow emergencies, so with snow removal. That was a newer part of the policy. That has been fairly successful. We have about 40% of our downtown customers do use that policy. And so we don't try to take private business, but if there is a need, customers can use us and they know that price is as established in the policy. Should the council approve the policy, what we'll do is try to work within our guidelines, not only during snow emergencies, but during regular maintenance to try to provide for our customers during this period. We hope to bring this back to you every couple of years for updates. You'll also see that we're going to be doing that with other policies that we've established, operational policies. And what we're trying to do is really just clarify our operations. The policy begins on pages 93 through 97, and there's a resolution we're asking for approval on page 98.
Thank you. Any questions for Pete? I have a question that's kind of tangential. It goes back to the open comment period where we had a question about, not directly related to this, but to snow removal process. You said that the process, if, for example, a snow plow, one of ours, were to hit Kirby's, the process would be to submit an incident report, something like that?
Yeah, so typically they submit something, whether it's an email or communicate directly with the foreman, the streets foreman, or the superintendent in that area. And so we'd note that. We do, I know the policy certainly addresses mailboxes.
Any damage?
Yeah.
And do Kirby's belong to our waste hauler, or do they belong to the city?
Kirby's belong to our waste hauler.
And what sort of arrangement do we have with them in case a Kirby is damaged by somebody working either for the city or a contractor who's working on behalf of the city?
In the last 26 years that I've been here, I have never met with the contractor to establish damages related to a Kirby. So I don't know where that discussion comes from. I've never done that.
So they just kind of understand that's the cost of doing business, damages happen, and they generally, unless there was something extraordinary, like maybe a whole block of Kirby's
Right.
damaged, they're willing to replace them.
Well, and part of our effort continues to be, obviously, we don't want to hit anything, but one of the things that we do struggle with as a community is ensuring that Kirby's are not in the roadway, especially in the winter, right? So we put a lot of things in the hot sheet and others, and that does happen on occasion. I would say that we also have times where, through the actions of snow plowing activity, Kirby's are tipped over. They might not have been hit by the snow plow, but snow being pushed into it, depending on where they're located, what space is available, all those kind of things happen. We can have a future discussion if you'd like about the liability issues. Certainly the city always has liability relative to hitting things or things flying, but we mitigate that in an appropriate way. We have well-trained drivers who do an excellent job with this. And so the incidents that we have are relatively low. I would mention though that it does continue to be a struggle when we have lots of snow piled up on the boulevards, and where do people put their Kirby's and how does that all fit together? And so that is always a work in progress every winter. And so I think we handle it very well, but I'm not sure where all of those comments or the basis for that.
Sure, yeah.
But that's how we do it.
Well, let's hope snow is a long way in our future, not imminent, but we can talk about that more
Yeah.
with residents perhaps as we go into the winter. So we have a new waste hauler and good reminders to people to try to keep their Kirby's on the curb and not in the street. And also a good reminder for our crews that when incidents happen, they need to be reported. Yep. All right. Well, that satisfied my curiosity, so thanks to everybody for indulging those questions. If there aren't further questions, the resolution, oh, yeah, go ahead, Dustin.
Pete, I have a couple questions regarding how complaints are handled.
Yep.
So in looking at it, is we respond within 24 hours to the complaint? Is that by immediate action, or is that by going and looking at the property that the complaint was made about?
Could be a combination of either, just depending on what staff we have available. So sometimes the office will supply a comment or try to get a hold of them by telephone to see what the issue is. And it can be as serious as if we would hit a parked car, we will contact our insurance representative and start pushing for a resolution that way. But we do have quite a few calls, and we are lucky because the phone rings at City Hall as well as Public Works, and so we have a lot of information out there. Superintendents try to inform everybody of the activities, and again, snow emergencies when they're called, we go forward with that.
Thank you. Additional questions for Pete or for Todd? Hearing none, the resolution adopting an updated snow removal and ice control policy is on page 98 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Rath,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution accepting Highway 22 corridor study.
Madam Mayor and City Council, as we talked about this at workshop last week, a couple of things that I wanted to bring to light. In 22, we started working with our partners, Nicollet County and MnDOT, in the planning process to do a corridor study. This was unique in how this process worked for us this time because we took the lead. The city of St. Peter took the lead. We did this at the request of MnDOT to try to help them with not only their workload, but to also address some of the concerns that we had brought up during the course of the interactions with MnDOT and the county. We had 3 phases to this project. Phase 1 was data collection, where we really went out and looked at existing conditions, spent some time having a professional go out there and evaluate that. Phase 2, we looked at alternatives, we took public feedback, and then really evaluated the data and tried to look and see if there was a major issue out there, which of course we all knew that the surface was a primary issue, and then right angle crashes became evident. In phase 3, we started talking about preferred concepts. This project did take a little longer than we had originally planned. I have to applaud Bolton and Mink, who was our engineer on this project, for sticking with us, because I'm sure their hours were used up about a month before this project was completed. But we did have good participation with the public and major players along the line, and we were looking for the public to weigh in. The primary concerns in the corridor, as we mentioned in the memo, were talked about poor pavement, safety, and crashes. The secondary concerns that we identified were major intersection delays, pedestrian crossings, bicycle connections, truck turning movements with the addition of Quick Trip, that became an issue, and then corridor travel speeds. And so all of those will be considered in the future as we get into the scoping. Public open houses, we held 2 during the course of this, June 28th of 2022 and then March 15th of 2023. Both were well attended. What it came down to is the 3 corridor segments that we evaluated and ended up looking at was the west segment, which is out by County Road 20 all the way to Sunrise Drive. Okay, and out of that we selected alternate 2, as we talked about at the workshop, and that's a compressed roundabout. Todd has some pictures that he'll be showing up there that really talk about with Klein Street and with Sunrise, and what we came up with alternate 2, which would be a compressed roundabout at Sunrise. In the middle section, which is Washington Avenue and Galt Street, we came up with 1 compressed, alternate 1, which was a compressed roundabout at the intersection of Washington. One of the major concerns that we'll have to address in the next 5 years during scoping will be access out there. As you know, we haven't developed that second crossroad or that extra access to the northern areas there where the residents are constructing. So that's a major concern of ours. We do have a couple of options that we'll evaluate, but during scoping again, the detail will come out and we'll be able to address that. And then our east segment, east of Galt, down by Old Minnesota Avenue, we also looked at a compressed roundabout there. Improving the turning and pedestrian movements in that area with Quick Trip will be a major issue that we'll have to contend with. We did use an evaluation matrix as our guide for feedback and for decision making on this process. And I know the print is really small there, but in the report, the electronic report, you'll be able to see that very, very well. Going forward, MnDOT has enough information now and public feedback and city and county feedback that they will take this and start doing scoping. They'll narrow the process down, start looking at budget funds, grant funds. And as you know, we've been very successful working with MnDOT on grant funds and a variety of different projects. And so we're very optimistic that some of this could stay on track here. We're still looking at 2028 as far as a reconstruction project. And again, if the surface lasts longer and we don't have too many major accidents, that may be extended, but right now it's on the agenda for 28. We're going to continue working with MnDOT to assist with Highway 22 maintenance along that area. And then we want to keep our open line of communication with our partners. We have been very successful with MnDOT and with Nicollet County in making a lot of these things happen, along with receiving grant funds. And so once we get into the scoping, we'll have partners that are all pushing in the same direction. There is a resolution on page 130. We're asking for approval of that. We'll turn that report over to MnDOT and help them get started on a scoping project.
Thank you, Pete. Questions for Pete? Emily?
Just a question for clarification. So by accepting this study, are we accepting their recommendations for those 3 major phases of this project?
You guys are basically approving what we have received for feedback already. That doesn't mean that MnDOT is going to be tied into that decision-making process. Funding will be a major issue along there, but as we have determined based on the safety data and the public feedback, it would be in our best interest to say, here's what we'd like to have happen. The city was a driver of the Washington Avenue intersection. We've had multiple complaints with speed and pedestrians crossing there. So our major push was Washington Avenue along that line. We've been fortunate that the traffic data says that at the intersection of Old Minnesota and at Sunrise, there's going to be issues once traffic increases along that way. So slowing down the traffic would be an option. Doesn't mean it's going to be the only option, but we also have pedestrian safety to consider there.
Yeah, thank you. I have some concerns. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this so far and the study and all the feedback that we've collected, but I have some concerns about some of their proposals, like having the bike lane and keeping the speed limit 45 miles an hour. I just think that's a recipe for disaster. I don't think that works, and other things along those lines. So I'm right now not sure if I'm comfortable with their plans as presented. But I understand that is all part of the process,
Right.
and this is like step one or,
Yeah.
yeah.
This isn't a blueprint though, too, for construction. So this is kind of a guide that says, hey, here's what I'm hearing out there. The bike community was at the open house, and they did express their opinion on what they would like to see as far as bike safety and other issues there.
Todd, did you have something to add?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But I'm happy to answer any questions if people have
Pete, I was
questions.
present for one of those meetings, and I don't believe the concern of the 45 mile an hour was presented by the biking community, was it?
I don't know if they presented that. There was a concern with bike safety and then access. I think Emily's point is that the speeds are high. They didn't really say 45 was the issue. Bikes are always going to be safer at lower speeds. But what MnDOT does is on improvements like this is they do a traffic study and a speed study. And if people are driving 50, they're not going to post it at 30. So they're going to evaluate that, and then some of these are traffic calming issues in the first place. You go through 3 roundabouts on there, it's going to be harder to get up to speed on that, which should improve bike safety along the lines there as well.
Carrie? During the public comment period and the public engagement, did we hear from residents that live near that Washington Avenue intersection that somewhat mirrors my experience door knocking in that area? I heard a lot about that intersection and concerns about safety, especially crossing Washington getting over to North Elementary or the other schools.
Right, we did hear quite a bit. One of the things that we heard was pedestrians didn't have enough time to get across. So narrowing of that road in there for the purpose of a roundabout to a single lane roundabout would slow the traffic down through there. That helps with the amount of time it takes to get across the street. But one of the other major issues that they discussed was, how are we gonna get out?
Right.
You know, once that goes under construction,
Right.
how will
Heard
this
that
happen?
too. And I think in the future, it might be helpful for the council to have more information or data about, I am not convinced that changing the speed limit is going to change how drivers are driving through there. I think we have to think more about narrowing and that perception that the driver sees when they're going up and down the hill. I think that's a better strategy, and that would hope that this, study and then the scoping work, that we continue having conversations about speed, because the truth is that we do have so many kids and walkers and bikers and all sorts of people in our community crossing that area, and people do fly down. I just would like to, have more information in the future about what really impacts speed. Is it changing the speed limit, or maybe some data or studies that have been done about what happens when roads are narrowed down?
Brad?
Overall, I have concerns on speed as well. I do agree though that having, the roundabouts, I think the Sunrise and Washington roundabout will see significant difference there. We'll see significant decrease. Might see more acceleration from Washington to Minnesota, just because it just seems like there might be more space there. I think narrowing the roads, but the roundabouts, I think people won't, they have to decelerate and then accelerate, and they're gonna be seeing the next roundabout coming up, so. Overall, do I have concerns about speed? Yes, I agree, we have to figure out, how do we narrow the roads to even make people think about it more. Overall, though, I think we are getting at the heart of what we need from a crossing perspective is those 3 intersections need to be addressed from it, which I think we're doing a good job with the roundabout, so.
I live and walk in that area a lot, and so I know crossing Washington there is really treacherous and scary even as an adult, and so I have a hard time imagining kids doing it, and I don't think reducing the speed alone would help much because of that hill, the hill that's involved. And so I really think the roundabout, I'm hopeful, will be an effective tool in that location to help slow speed as people approach, particularly coming from the west, moving east, will, as they approach that roundabout. So I'm going to favor that.
Matt, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, if you wanted to finish your thought, though, this is different from speed. My question.
I just kind of want to wrap and provide some information, about what we provided on your desk to you. That's it.
Okay.
Well, I was just curious about the scoping work that we've been referring to. So there's acceptance of the study and the scoping work. Does MnDOT continue engaging with the council, with the public during the scoping period of time? Because a lot can change between now and 2028, of course.
Yes, and in fact, the pattern and the process that we've utilized previously is once the plans, there'll be a number of opportunities, but as we get towards that completion of the scoping, and here's how wide it is, and here's how tall it is, and here's what color the bituminous is gonna be, or whatever it is, that information comes back to you and to the community as well. And we've done this on other projects, so there'll be likely, again, an open house that says, here's kind of what you told us, here's the work we've been doing, here's where we're at, here you go.
And they
And
always
then-
have a page on their website for
There
each
is.
project with how to get
Yeah.
in touch as well.
Yeah.
Right, and they have it assigned to Mary Deacon, who was with you guys last week at the workshop. And so she'll be on that project, all the way through construction, so.
Mayor members, the only other thing I wanted to point out is we did put some information on your desk, and as DOT is committed, so are we are committed, from Mark Plotz. I know that he submitted a number of pieces of information to DOT. It was at the open house at the senior center as well, and provided commentary there, but we wanted to make sure that people know, we want to make sure that you have opinion and thought from your community, and so we wanted to make sure that everyone got this. The email that I received did not show that all of you received it. Now, that might have been the case, but the one that I received did not show that, so we wanted to make sure that you had that as a part of this.
Dustin?
I would request in the future, if we have something like this, to get a hold of it more than 10 minutes before the meeting to have a chance to process it, look at it. I have the utmost respect for Mark. He's been in my classroom. We've collaborated on other things. But in 10 minutes, I can't go through everything in a meaningful way.
Yeah, and I apologize for that. I can't help how or who they send stuff to. Once I receive it, I can make sure that it gets out to you as expediently as we can.
The only thing I wanted to say, which I'm not sure I explicitly said, that I do favor a lower speed limit out there, regardless of what we do, infrastructure-wise. I do think the speed limit should be slower. It is not highway traffic. It's, there's a lot, and as development continues to move that direction, there will be more bikers, walkers, cars moving through on that road, and I just want to keep it safe as possible. Emily?
Yeah, basically speaking to that, I wanted to say that I agree that I would like to see a lower speed limit out there, but I also agree with other things that have been said and that MnDOT presented last Monday about, you know, narrowing the road and the roundabouts that are gonna help deter people from speeding through that highway. So I agree with that. Like, to me, it's a both and not an either or. That's how I feel about it.
All right.
If I can, Mayor
Yes.
members, again, we're happy to continue to answer questions, but the recommendation from staff is that you accept the study, and the resolution is in your packet to do that.
If there's no further discussion, the resolution accepting Highway 22, Dodd Road, Corridor Study Final Report, I realize I just said it's not a highway. To me, it's a city. I think of it as a city street.
Sure.
I know that it is technically a highway. That resolution is on page 130 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Wade.
Aye.
The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Last up, adoption of a resolution authorizing purchase of land owned by school district number 508.
Mayor members, this starts on page 131 within your packet, and this is something that we've talked about on a number of different occasions. So just a few things that I want to point out. The rationale or the reason that staff is recommending the council has considered and directed action related to this is really to provide additional enhancement to opportunities for housing within St. Peter. In particular, this provides us some additional opportunity within what I might call the mid-market area within the housing marketplace. So lots that are generally something a little bit bigger than 10,000 square feet. You have a number of what we might call entry-level, smaller lots that are available that the city owns that you continue to sell and development occurs on. But as we've discussed and as the data shows very clearly, you have very few lots that are in excess of that 10,000 square foot number. And there's a significant opportunity within the marketplace to meet needs and demands that you have for people that want to come to town and build on that size of lot within a managed area. And so that's what really drives this discussion moving forward. I'd also mention that this also demonstrates a opportunity for additional collaboration with the school district, and that the land that you see on this map and the land that we're talking about, again, approximately 23 acres is owned by the school district. And I've gone through a few times with all of you, so I won't do it tonight, the history of how this property was bought and sold and acquired and traded and all those kind of things with the school district. And so this really does represent, as you talked about at your meeting with the school district, not quite a week ago, but about a week ago, a lost opportunity for the school district, but a real opportunity for collaboration to ensure that housing, which benefits your taxpayers and tax base and their taxpayers and tax base and weighted pupil units, continue to see growth within the city of St. Peter. The price here is set at $8,300 an acre, which is the price, the average price that was paid for the land located within this subdivision at the time that it was acquired. Some may recall that this is what we had commonly referred to as the Loomis property. And so again, the district and the city acquired this really collaboratively a number of years back. I'm happy to answer additional questions, but our goal is to continue to work with additional housing opportunities within that mid-market segment, work collaboratively with not just the school district, but other potential development partners, which you're aware of and we've talked about on many occasions. Our goal is to continue to try and move that forward based on the council direction. The information that's included in your packet and the sales documents have been reviewed by your city attorney and have been signed already by the school district. So if you take action tonight, this will initiate closing on the property, again, for approximately $8,300 per acre. It's approximately $184,000 in total is the price tag. Happy to answer any questions that you might have to the best of my ability. We've been working towards this for a while, and again, the recommendation from staff is to move forward.
Brad?
I guess just another budget question on it. So the $184,000, it's to be paid from general fund reserves.
Yes.
So this seems like it's similar to what happened with the North Industrial Park that's going to be paid back. Will this be shown as a decrease in the general fund, or will that stay even and basically there'll be an IOU?
So this will be an IOU to your fund, but as Brad, I'm interpreting your question, and if I'm not interpreting it appropriately, please correct me. But I think you're asking this question relative to the reserve amount that you show within your budget discussion. This does not show within that reserve amount. So this is about cash.
Yep. So basically, okay, just
Yep.
wanted to make sure that.
Yeah. Yep. And again, the goal would be is that as this property is sold, the funds would come back to repay that.
So that's why basically the reserve amount won't change. There'll just be a debt on
Right.
a debt from basically this development on there. So
That's correct.
Additional questions? Dustin?
Oh, you almost called me Brad.
I almost called you Brandon. I was mashing up Dustin.
I was
and
just going to say how
Brad.
happy I am that we as a council and administration were able to work with the school district to make this happen and bring more housing to town. I'm very excited for the possibilities of this.
I second that, Dustin. I don't think of it as a loss for the school district. I think of it as an investment that they are making in our community and getting more pupils, weighted pupil units, AKA kids.
More students.
More students, yes. Brad?
and on that, not just for the school district, for ourselves, it'll be increasing our tax base. We've had some increase on the commercial side of things, but our residential side has been slow, and that just overall as inflation kicks in, just puts a burden on our existing taxpayers. So anything we can do to increase that base is wanted. And we want more people in our community as well.
And people want to be here. We're seeing that very, very apparently through the multifamily developments that have happened and how fast they fill. St. Peter's a great place to be, and we want new neighbors. Yeah.
Just a quick question. Is this subject to a TIF district or
No.
in that area? So this particular parcel isn't subject to a TIF?
Correct.
Okay.
Additional questions? Hearing nothing, the resolution directing the purchase of 22.20 acres of bare land from Independent School District number 508 is on page 142 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBosse,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. That was, thankfully, our last item of new business tonight. So we're gonna move on to reports. I had prepared some remarks regarding Patriot Day and National Day of Service, and I think I'm gonna table those. Still very important to remember the people we lost and the first responders who worked so hard in that terrible situation and all the people left behind. But I feel like I need to really address some of the remarks that were made during the open comment period today about the RFP and the possibility of the Islamic Center being selected to take up residence in our downtown. And the question was raised, have we talked as a council to any members, leaderships, leaders, religious leaders in Minneapolis? And I can say I haven't talked to any of those people, but the people I have talked to are my friends and neighbors, my colleagues here in St. Peter who are Muslim, and I would like any of them who are watching this on YouTube, who stuck through to the end of this long meeting, to know that I unequivocally and unapologetically value them, accept them, love them, and I want them here as a part of our community. They are welcome here. I represent them, even though I look different, I worship differently. They are my neighbors. I value them. No matter what happens with the RFP discussion, whether or not there's the Islamic Center stays where it is, moves downtown, finds a whole other location, I just want to express my support for our wonderful, vibrant Islamic community here in St. Peter. That is all I'm going to say about that. I will move on to any council members who have reports at this time. Brad.
Well, first off, well said, Madam Mayor. I appreciate you saying that. I was thinking something similar. You said it much better than I ever could have, so thank you. And now on to what I was going to talk about. Through Region 9, through our growing relationship with Region 9, I've had the opportunity to join a group called Climate Smart Municipalities. It's made up of city and county elected officials and staff, as well as education professionals, including from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and Morris campus and MSU, among others. I was lucky. I had the privilege, they have monthly meetings, and I had the privilege this last Thursday to do a presentation on changing mindsets, talking about the evolution of prior city councils, basically having a hesitancy to invest or to take on risk when addressing climate change or renewable, in particular renewable energy. The thing about these monthly meetings is every other month, this is a Zoom call. It's also done with some counterparts in Germany. And I was lucky enough to actually do my presentation when the German delegation was a part of it this month. One thing I think we need to be proud of is the work we've gotten to as far as actually installing the plans to install a solar array. With the prior things such as the LED lights and stuff, the council went ahead with, but that was with a written guarantee of a certain payback period. The Lamont solar array didn't have a city investment in it. But this is the water treatment plant solar rate. That actually, it's a big step because we had a projected payoff period, but not a certain payoff period. There's a certain extra level of risk there. Thing about climate smart municipalities is you also get to see where other communities are, and as good and we should be happy with the progress we made. We're behind a lot of other people. One of the challenges is, and it was in my PowerPoint I provided to the mayor and Pete and Todd, was being a municipal electric and the fact that we're the power providers and we have to balance rates. We're not just paying into Excel and cutting that bill. We actually have a big impact as far as our decisions impact ourselves. I would like to, the one thing is you look at our neighbors to the north in Le Sueur. They've got a digester that produces power. It's now going to be converting over to renewable natural gas. But now they're also working with their power provider to install a 5 kilowatt solar array south of town to help take care of some of the transmission issues. These things aren't without risk, but they are with a plan. Take Mankato, they've done an inventory of their fleet of vehicles to look at prioritizing, electrification. You know, some small cars you can get electric quickly. Buses are going to take a while. It's a call basically to action, to look to for us as well to have a plan to step beyond. We have an extra 50 kilowatts we can build. It took us almost 4 years of us being on the council to get to that first array. With that extra 50 kilowatts, I would love to see next year to have a spot to go ahead with that, and then start working with SIMPA as far as what can we do next. It's not a what can we do, it's a what can we do next. And I really think we have an opportunity. Both we have challenges being the power company, but we have an opportunity to do more because of it. Look forward, Pete was gonna have some incentive ideas later this year. I'm looking forward to seeing what some of those incentives are. And I would love to be able to bring back to climate smart municipalities the changes that we're putting on ourselves, and they can learn from us as well. That's all I have.
Thank you, Brad. Anything else? I think, no? All right, we will move on to reports from the city administrator.
Madam Mayor, I have one listed and then two others that are more updates that I want to make sure that you are aware of. First of all, I do want to mention the MMUA board appointment. Pete has been appointed to the executive board of MMUA. And as you know, MMUA stands for the Minnesota Municipal Utility Association. And so along with your overarching policy of if we're members of organizations, we should be in leadership roles, whether it's SIMPA or the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities or others, we should be involved in that. And so I want to congratulate Pete on that appointment. He's there because he brings a wealth of information related to water and wastewater resources. And as he indicated, they have lots of electric people on there, and he does electric too. But water and wastewater are areas where MMUA continues to try and grow their base. And so Pete can offer a lot to that, so I wanted to mention that. That's a feather in all of our cap. St. Peter is really well known for the work and the technology and the foresightedness you've had related to wastewater, which protects the environment, and water treatment, which has become more and more important within the upper Midwest, as I'm sure you've all seen in news media. And so again, thanks Pete for that. The other two items that I have is MRVT. For those of you that are on the MRVT board, we have a meeting tomorrow. So if you want to stick around afterwards and we can ride share or do something like that, we can talk a little bit about what time we're taking off. That meeting is in Le Sueur, and it's the regular every other month meeting of MRVT. And the last one that I want to mention is you should have all received a letter from Dave Geschwin inviting you to SIMPA's annual meeting, which is in October 13th in Bloomington. Some of you have been there before, there's always a wonderful program, something that is technically informational relative to the electric grid or utilization of power or changes in climate and technology utilization, transmission. A number of different topics are usually covered, and so it's really worthwhile. And there's usually a motivational speaker, and it's a great opportunity to meet with the other members, elected and appointed members of SIMPA. And so if you haven't been there in the past, I'd really encourage you to look at your calendar and then let Angie know, Angie know, and we'll be happy to get you signed up for that. It is a worthwhile expenditure of your time and energy to participate in that. So I wanted to point that out to you. Pete, did I miss anything on that one, or the MMUA? I want to give you a chance to talk about MMUA if you want. All right. Those are the items that I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to say on the SIMPA board meeting, I went to it last year. It's very valuable. Last year it gained insight as to basically the challenges, particularly, the fact that coal got really expensive because the trains weren't running. And it just, seeing where they're rate making decisions, seeing the budgets for the year, the capital improvement plan. I just thought it was very insightful. And motivational speaker was a comedian, I believe. I would definitely recommend if you have the opportunity to be able to go to it. So,
Brett, I know you didn't say this, but it's easier to do this hard work with a smile.
yeah,
Right? And so it's
It is.
great that those opportunities are available within our organizations.
part of my presentation was the growth was building relationships, and when going to Washington D.C. Going to Washington D.C. and then going to the SIMPA board meeting and building and continuing to foster those relationships. And you get to know the people behind the decisions instead of it just being SIMPA. It's Joe Hoffman, it's Dave Giswich. And so that's why. But this was so incredibly informative. The Washington D.C. trip was, it was helpful, but I probably gained more from the SIPA board meeting than I did the APPA meeting, so.
So if you need more information or you haven't received your letter, please let us know. It should have gotten to all of you, but if not, please let us know if you have interest and we'll get you hooked up.
I have one quick.
Yes,
thing.
Carrie.
If you are not able to go to that meeting, the Regional Economic Development Alliance will have their annual meeting on Thursday, October 12th in the evening, and that's always held at Gustavus.
And the
You're
food is
invited.
very good. It's always very good. So I'll put a plug in for that. And it's a great meeting. It's a great information about the good work that Rita's doing, a chance to meet with other local leaders, and so it's a super opportunity as well. Lots of good stuff.
Madam Mayor, I'm done.
All right, anything further? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. We need maybe a motion?
Yeah.
How about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, see, they wanted it, I knew. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks,
So Carrie, I was
everybody.
actually gonna ask, what is the format for that Rita meeting?
So they're doing it a little bit differently, so they will have, like a strategic planning session earlier in the day. I think that starts at 2.
Members, if you'd like, I can pass these around too. These were passed out in a meeting that I was at a CCU meeting, Greater Mankato Grove.